Hola, amigos de Retumba. This is Adam from Rivers of Nile. We were playing at the C3 stage in Guadalajara, coming up real soon, and we hope to see you all there. We're gonna have a great time. It's gonna be a journey through the whole set, the whole four records, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. We got Imperial Triumphant coming out too. Don't miss it.
Hola y bienvenidos. Les saluda Alfonso a nombre de Retumba. Estamos en una entrevista más. Y es que la banda Rivers of Nile está próxima a tocar shows aquí en México junto con Imperial Triumphant. Ambas bandas llegarán por primera vez a nuestro país. Y como saben, se trata de dos bandas consentidas aquí en el blog. Siempre nos hemos pronunciado en favor de sus trabajos uno tras otro porque creemos en lo que hacen y porque nos gusta. Incluso ha tocado defender un poco lo que fue The Work, pero lo tomamos con gracia. Y bueno, más allá, se trata de dos bandas que son importantes en el panorama actual y en el paradigma actual del metal progresivo, del metal extremo, y nos entusiasma su visita. Ya era hora de que se presentaran para su público mexicano. Personalmente los estaré viendo a ellos y a ustedes este 26 de febrero en el show de Guadalajara. Los invito. Anteriormente hablé con Zachary de Imperial, justamente con este motivo. Pueden checar la entrevista aquí en el canal. Ahora los invito a que me acompañen aquí a esta charla donde tengo al líder de Rivers of Nile, Adam Biggs, quien es bajista, compositor de las letras y de la música y ahora también vocalista principal tras la partida de Jake. Está aquí para que hagamos un breve repaso por su discografía, para que nos cuente qué están haciendo ahora, qué podemos esperar de ellos este año y por supuesto para hablar de un poco de sus shows y de la visita que harán a México. So, hello Adam, it's nice meeting
Hello,
you.
nice to
I
meet you as well.
apologize for the long introduction, but thank you for being here. I know it's Saturday, you are with your family, so I appreciate you taking the time for this conversation. Uh,
That's no problem.
well, I wanted to take the opportunity to speak with you about your first visit to Mexico, along with Imperial Triumphant. I think it's quite special that that the two bands come together. Um, is this your first Mexican interview over Zoom?
No, actually, I've been talking to some fine Mexican publications all week. But yeah,
Well, as
happy
you
to.
can see, we are excited for your visit. We are waiting. I'm going to discuss your shows here in Mexico later in the conversation. But first, let's discuss some of your work over the years, please. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Well, I always have like a mental block when choosing the first question to start off the conversation. So let me just share my history of my first encounter with the band. It was with the video for Synchronos, and I was shocked. I remember thinking, man, this is crazy. The music was great, loud, fast, heavy. But the video with a bald man screaming inside a cage, that was like the memorable part, maybe. So since then, I became a fan. But it's funny to look back and realize that I would have never imagined that band with that song, with that video, to what has become now. So let me ask you, did you ever imagine going through such changes from that song to writing a song like Maybe One Day?
um, yeah, that's definitely an old school callback there. That was a fun time. I liked that version of the band, back then, and it was just like, it was just crazy and as technical and fast and heavy as we could be. I guess it's a weird thing to think about, but like maybe in some ways I did kind of envision us like, kind of finding a more, a different musical edge after a while. because like you know you play songs at like 250 beats per minute and you're blasting and it's like really physically demanding. Um, and you know like it's all well and good when you listen to that kind of stuff on a record or you know whatever, but like live it becomes a big mess. And that's like a lot of the times like you know you're out there, you know, realistically we're out here playing like, you know, we played 100 shows this past year in 2022, and it's just so it's a lot of work and like uh you know it's just to play that fast and technical all the time and have it sound, you know, great to the audience. It's a lot that can go wrong. So like when you know over the past 10 years or so that we've evolved our musical stylings a little bit here, it's been we've been, you know, focused on, you know, reining it in a little bit, but without making it less interesting. So I guess, you know, something like maybe one day is kind of seeing how far we can go with that idea of just changing the core root of the thing of the band and like, you know, doing it was like the spirit of it was sort of to do something that was just like you know, something that's really against type, you know, it's a, something that's really, you know, for people like you who have gone back that far with us to see that kind of contrast. I think that's sort of what we meant to do with that song. But you know, it's, you know, we've never closed any doors. Like there's always the possibility of like, you know, hey, maybe we do want to write another 250 BPM blast beat song. You know, that door's always open. Like we might go back and do it, but just, you know, at the time for now, we wanted to see, you know, when you really strip things back, what, you know, what kind of music can we make?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, nothing is written in the stone with Rivers, but I can tell the audience appreciate the change and the evolution and the uh, present. But let me just follow a chronological order. I would like to address each of your albums in one question. So after your EP hierarchy, you took a big step, I would say, singing with the metal blade, sorry, and released Conscious Seed. So what was like that like singing with a major label, introducing the band's first album, and also doing some change in the sound, like a more proggy, groovier death metal at the time. My
Well,
question is, how conscious was the band and at that point of your sound, like the intentions with the genre or your style of playing, also as well with the four season concept, and maybe what the future could bring at that point.
um, yeah, I mean, so I I will make a slight correction. We had two EPs that we did. There was the Hierarchy EP in 2010, and then the next year we put out one called Temporality Unbound that had Synchronos and Birth of the Omni Savior on it. So I mean, you can listen to the difference between those two things and really get the idea of like, you know, we went from being I guess Hierarchy is the more like brutal kind of like dying fetus inspired thing, like it's more of a deathcore leaning, I would say. And then Temporality Unbound, it still had some of that, but it was more, I think we were trying to do more like we were trying to step out and be a little proggier. Yeah, you know, we were trying to do weirder stuff. I think a lot of it didn't work, you know, and but um, so so that EP kind of was a weird time for us. But then all of a sudden we get signed to Metal Blade and we get this big 5 record contract that we need to fulfill. Yeah, and so you know, but you know, like we're a brand new band. We didn't really, you know, that's what we knew what we had to do. So you know, from a sonic standpoint, we were coming off of Temporality Unbound, thinking like, well, that didn't really work out so well for us. I don't think like maybe it did. Like we felt like the material wasn't exactly what we wanted it to be. So we're like, why don't we? why don't we reach backwards a little bit? We'll get this hierarchy sound back a little bit from the first EP, and we'll like try to extrapolate that into a full length. Um, but all the while knowing that we're going to be recording it at Mana Studios with Eric Rutan, big old school kind of production and things like that. So there's a lot of those kind of old school death metal elements started to creep into the writing process, and like it became less of a brutal experiment in getting that hierarchy sound back, and it turned into like yeah, it turned into like an old what like maybe like the sound like an old school technical death metal band. We weren't very conscious of what we were trying to do during the conscious seat of light, really. Like we were just trying to make, you know, 35 minutes of music, or 40 minutes of music, because we hadn't done that yet and we didn't know what that felt like. So I think the end result is a little all over the place for that record. It's just, it's just like 100% more brutal than we thought it was going to be. Like, there's so many, it's just so much blast beats and like chaos through most of it, and like we just didn't really like, we weren't able to like step back and see like it didn't have the at the end of the day, it didn't have the dynamic kind of range sonically that we wanted it to. But I mean, and I think that kind of made us look at that record a little like, like we didn't nail it for a while. But I look back at that album now and like, there's some good songs. Like, I think there's some good stuff on that record. But see, for the as far as like the concept stuff goes with the seasons, like we signed this big contract. We have to make 5 albums. Like we've never made one album, so now we have to make 5 of them. And it's like, where do we get all these ideas from?
Yes.
And we're Pennsylvanian, uh, born and raised band. When when this idea came together, it was, all of us were still living in Pennsylvania or from there, and you feel a lot of seasonal shift when you live there. The winters are very pronounced, the spring and fall very pronounced, the summer also very hot, unforgiving. So it's something that like all of us understand, and because we've grown up there, and obviously many other people in the world experience the same thing. So we figured, why not use the seasons as a focal point? Like we don't have to constrain ourselves too much, but when we make this stuff, like keep that in mind, keep the spring in mind. And for that first record for Conscious Seed, I didn't really like drive it into people's heads too hard, because the concept was fresh, and I think that that was kind of part of what makes that concept the spring concept. It's the new idea, it's the seed, it's the beginnings. It's not gonna it's not gonna be all the way perfect, but we're gonna you're gonna see the rawness of it. And so that was that record in a nutshell, basically.
Okay, let me go back for a bit to some of the things you mentioned in your answer. And I don't know if you have thought of this or ever think of it, but in those years, in 2012, 2013, the American death metal went for like a phase of new discovery. I mean, the Faceless did Autotheism, not too long after you guys, also Black Crown Initiate, Fallujah, bands that were like the introduction to newer layers of sound for death metal. And I can say that Conscious Seed had like his own thing going on back then. Of course, it brought some changes as to what I could appreciate as for death metal back then. So yeah, it was like a formative years, or like a reformation of the extreme sides of death metal, and that was good. You guys did your work there, and if you didn't follow up with that, that's also great, because then followed Monarchy, and not to dismiss any of your records, because if you could read what I have wrote for each one of them, you will know that I really like and appreciate what the band has done, one record after the other. But my favorite one is Monarchy, not only in terms of music and what it did for my appreciation of the band, but also because of the memories of just being obsessed with those songs and listening with my friends, ex-girlfriend, going to the beach, drinking a lot, smoking a lot, just having the most fun while that album was being played. And over the years, that album became like a special one for me, for those memories. To this day, when I go to the beach with one of my friends, that album has to be blasting out loud. So to have this opportunity to talk with you all these years later, it's kind of special. So what can you tell me about the cycle of Monarchy? What does it mean for you to the summer season? Because if I remember correctly, the band also lost and received members at the time.
Yeah, so I guess that's the story of that record is kind of like, yeah, it begins with the fact that we had some lineup changes. Conscious Seed of Light, it was a big shift in our world, and like we did a lot of big league tours and stuff. Stuff that it felt like we just as a band weren't ready for. Like the guys in the and like when you're touring at that level, and at the very beginning, your opening tours, like you're making no money, and I had guys in the band who felt really insecure about that. I think that's what it came down to at the end, um, and just couldn't stay dedicated to it, and so we lost our original drummer and our original guitar player, who they were like the they were the founding guys in the band, essentially. Like it was their band. Brody and Jake and myself were, not hired guns. Like everybody had a voice in the band, but it was just like, there's a whole section of voices that are gone now. Um, and I think there was a lot of expectation on us, like going forward. Like I think as far as like, can you follow up that first record, and is it without these guys, is it going to be the same, or are we going to be in for something different here? I think even to a degree, like I think there were people who, it felt like anyway, there were people that were expecting, Brody and myself to fail at delivering this thing, and it felt like us, Brody and myself definitely at the time were thinking about, like, it feels like people want us to not win at this thing. It feels like the walls are closing in, and we need to prove them wrong. And so that was where Monarchy, kind of the seeds of it started to blossom. And um, it's fun. It's funny that you say that it was like that's like your beach going record, because for like that's kind of a big dose of the inspiration for that record for me was like, thinking about summertime, thinking about like just like having fun, and like I wanted the record to feel more fun. I don't know if it necessarily does across the board or anything, but the fact that you had fun listening to the record, it warms my heart. um, but yeah, like it was, man, making that record was a tough deal, because we had gotten a new drummer who lived in New York City. So Jake, and our new guitar player also lived in New York City. So Jake, Brody, and myself, for writing and practices and stuff, would drive up to New York City from where we lived in Pennsylvania, and just like cram ourselves into this station wagon and drive up there. None of us had any money, and morale was kind of low. And we drove up there and back so often. The traffic is just horrible. Like this sometimes would take it's supposed to be a 3 hour drive. Sometimes it would take 8 to get one way, and I ruined a car doing 2 cars doing it. I got into a big a pile-on accident. I had to rescue my bass from my the trunk of my car before it got pancaked by a pickup truck. One day when we were supposed to be driving up to New York, so we had to skip it that day. And then I just like completely ran the next car that I had into the ground, driving it back and forth from New York. But eventually, we got Monarchy done, and it was a fight the whole time. Jake moved to another state before he moved to Arizona before we recorded it, and it was like, we never really had to fly people back and forth before. It was a lot of questions, but at the end of the day, I think we put something together that, especially at the time, we were all really proud of. Um, but it's strange. Like I hear a lot of people, yourself included, just say that it's their favorite one that we've done and everything. But at the time, it didn't feel like it was working. Like it felt like I said, like I had said before, like I had said before, uh, uh, we had been doing a lot of big tours for the Conscious Seed of Light, and then when we put out Monarchy, it just seemed like we did a couple things here and there, but the offers really weren't coming in. Like we were trying to keep things afloat, and it just seemed like the heat had kind of died off of the band for a while, and we ended up getting into a point, I think, towards the end of the touring cycle for that record where we were like not sure what to do. Like it might have been in the end, like that, it might have been the thing where we were just like, yep, they were all right. Whatever we did just didn't work, and we can't do this without Ron and John. And so, but we still were writing anyway.
So those were difficult times for you, but I can say that it paid off because of the result is great. And it's funny because for my perspective, it seems that things were moving on great because the reception and at least from my friends, I'm telling you, it was like, wow, this band is doing great things. But I can see now why after that album, an album like O's came out, because this was the album that made you guys push your limits, like going into the challenge of making your music. Okay, so because then it came the fall season, and where also know My Name happened. And in my experience, I think the band has growth and expanded music-wise, along with my taste and appreciation for heavy or string music. So that album is special in that regard. First, because I never imagined that River would become big as the sexy that metal band, but also the reach of the songs in emotions, atmospheres. So, what can you tell me about that jump from Monarchy to Oath and the changes and the that album brought to the band?
Yeah, I mean, so like, towards the end of the Monarchy cycle, like I said, we ended up going through, another drummer, the guy who replaced our original drummer, like recorded Monarchy and then basically just kind of flaked out of the band. And then we had another guy, who was in the band for a little while, carried us through the tours, and he didn't end up working out. And then we finally found Jared Klein, our current drummer, and basically like we had a couple tours to wrap up with him, so we did those, and like we already had most of Owl's written with him, with just with no particular drummer in mind, but and we didn't have anybody else really on deck to do it, so we were just like, hey, Jared, why don't you do it? And so he did it. He joined the band, and put his crazy spin on these songs, which I think was really helpful. But I guess take a step back before we even get to that. I think in the creation of Where Owls Know My Name, we were very much feeling like monarchy didn't. We were getting at this point like monarchy didn't really work um, for us. Like it didn't blast us into the stratosphere. At best, we were still in the same spot we were before. And we were kind of like, how much longer in our lives can we live like broke touring musician guys? Um, and we were just like, okay, well, we've got these songs, and let's finish another record, and let's just do it, and let's just do whatever it is we want to do. We won't care if people will be upset with, like death metal fans are going to be mad at this or that. We want to do weird stuff, and we're going to make this record exactly what we want to do without worrying about any kind of repercussions. And so that's where Owl's Know My Name came in. It was just this whole thing where it's just like we had these songs and we just kept having these ideas where Brody would come to me and be like, we had one song with sax, that our friend Zach recorded, and then it just after that it just became more like, hey, well, how about we do this here? How about we do that there? How about another saxophone solo? And every time somebody came up with one of these ideas, I was just like, let's do it. No filter. Let's just go. Which I think was the best attitude for that record because we didn't feel like we had anything to lose, and maybe on paper we didn't, but it's turned out that that's really what resonated with people, and it you know it it got it, I remember still carrying that attitude from the last cycle, being like, this is this band draws like 35 people a night. Like we're not doing so hot. And then like when we first started touring on Owls, we played a headlining show in Portland, Maine, which is not the not like the hotbed for heavy metal or anything, but we played there and it was like sold out. There was like 400 people there, and we were just like, "What? Like, what's going on?" And then the next show, this tour, and like we had no expectations for this Canadian head tour that we were doing, and then it just like every night was just a banger. Like it was and we were just like, "Wow, people do like this. This is crazy. Like I can't believe it." Like so. I mean, it was the start of an upward trajectory for the band, and but when it comes to that, like it also like you also kind of when they tell you that when you're a kid, like you sell your soul for rock and roll or whatever, and you go, that's nonsense. Like I'm not gonna ask the devil to make me a better guitar player and it's gonna magically happen or whatever, like, but it does happen to you. I and like we didn't get huge or anything, but like I can only imagine for bands that get just like you're like you're Metallica or something, because like it consumes so much of your life that, and like I said, we were kind of straddling the fence there for so long from being like this kind of part-time band to being in demand enough where we could manage a full-time touring schedule. But then Owls was just like, we're in demand this much, and when you're gone and touring and you're not used to that, like the other things in your life at home just sort of start to deteriorate. It's an interesting process to watch and to manage and live through, and it changes a person. I try not to think about it too much and live as normally as I can when I am home. But it was I think at the end when I think of Where Owls Know My Name, I think of how the success of it really upended my way of life more than anything.
So are you saying that did it change you as your soul as a musician?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know that I mean, like it's when you have all of those when you suddenly have all these eyes on you, and you feel that people care, about what it is you're doing, uh, subconsciously or not, and then like you're just playing so much, you're just in demand, so you're playing so much that it's just like like said I felt like palpably way better at my instrument. Everything's just a lot more locked in. Like I'm a better performer overall because you're you're in that much demand because it has gone over well with people, and I'm not just playing in my bedroom most of the time or whatever.
Well, it changed for the better. And I will say that after Outs happened, the expectations for a new Rivers album were higher than ever. I mean, to its own merit, that album attracted a lot of attention because it sort of um, uncorked the bottle of creativity for the band. More freedom with the use of clean singing, the guitar solos, the atmospheres. So after that cycle of touring was done, and it was the moment for the next thing, was it established that it had to be bigger or broader than us? How was that approach to the work, in your own mind, when you guys starting to formulate ideas? And yeah, what was the thought process in the early days of making
Well, I mean, it's an interesting time because we're getting to where the current where we are currently, and but when we were starting to put the work together initially, it was like we would face a lot of questions very often about, are we nervous to follow up where owls know my name, and like we didn't initially, like not at all. Like it just felt like, owls, like we were playing that record front to back and like didn't think that much of it, and like it was a record to us that we were just like, let's throw anything at the wall and see what sticks, kind of a thing. So we were like, okay, why don't we just? I feel like we could push this experimental nature way further. And like, I guess if we were thinking about it that way, like it that was the only thing that had changed from one record to another, as we had gotten a little more, risk averse, not risk averse, but we were taking a little more risks. So I was like, why don't we, for better or worse, push that further and do something that's a little more, maybe in a way that we were like kind of just throwing caution to the wind on where I'll know my name. I wanted to make something that was intentionally grating to a degree. Um, I wanted to, because it just felt like Owls created this hunger in our fan base, and it did so much many wacky things to my life that it felt like people just wanted the same thing again, something. And I don't want to do that. Like I couldn't do it if we couldn't do it if we tried. Like it's a falsity. Like every time, that somebody would imply something of that nature, it's just like there's no going back for us. Like every time we try and go back to doing something, it becomes something else anyway. Like we've done that before. And so I mean, like, but those questions keep piling up. Like, oh, are you nervous to follow this up? Can you guys follow this up? And it becomes this big monumental thing in our heads where we're like, well, yeah, we thought we could follow it up, and now it seems like we can't. It seems like people don't have the kind of confidence in us. So I mean, naturally, it's not. I don't know what we do with that kind of feeling usually is go like, fuck you, like, and there's a lot of that on the work, honestly. Like there's a lot of like the second track ends in like it's almost inaudible. Like you can't, like it's almost like you can't listen to it. It hurts you so bad. Like that's literally it's literally us just reaching out there and just being like, like, in some ways it's a real genuine expression of frustration with the expectation that was put on us. And we, because at our core we're just these guys that just spent a lot of time slacking around trying to make metal music, and you know, it felt like there was a lot of weight on our shoulders to make this record. But what comes of it, I think, is a something that I think finally feels the most like it's trying to portray a seasonal theme. It has it has a concept that I feel is the crispest out of all four of the records. Like you can feel the winter, you can feel, you know, you can feel the icy hand of indifference upon you, and you can feel the struggle more in that record, which is to me what I love about it. I've I've spent at this point three records trying to give this seasonal feeling, and every time I feel like it's kind of there, but the work felt like a record that felt like winter. It's not about winter. It feels like you're in in this blizzard, and that's what I love about it. I feel like I got to express, you know, express myself and for the rest of the band. I felt like we expressed ourselves the most clearly on this record out of any one that we did. The big factor in the making of that record that I don't think we've covered yet was that the pandemic happened. So after Owls, we're planning on taking a little time off anyway to start work on the next record and everything. But then the pandemic happened, and we had to cancel an appearance in Mexico as a result of that. But other than that, we didn't get too hit by it. A lot of bands had to cancel a lot of major tours and lost a lot of money adjusting for new plans and stuff like that. Um, so it's it was we kind of got off easy, but at the same time, like we have members living in all different places at this point, and so traveling to back and forth to write became harder. It became harder to support ourselves during the writing of it, and like we had like I had basically quit my day job during the Owl cycle to just work on the band full time, and then the band doesn't exist. It's no longer making money during this time, so it was just I had to. I think most of us started landscaping, uh, things of that nature, but um, it was hard. It was hard to get through it because we didn't know what we were working towards. Like we didn't know if we were going to do this record and things were just going to go back to normal and we were going to be able to tour. And, yeah, I guess it was, it was an important time. So I don't know. It's up to you. We can move on if you'd like.
Sure. Well, let's keep talking about the work because, well, it's the album you are promoting still.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching an interview with Brody and Jake where Brody said something like, the next album will be the nastiest record River has done. I, of course, believed him, but my mind went off in the opposite direction. So when I received the album and played it for the first time, it blew my mind. Honestly, I'm not even joking. It was a satisfaction to recognize the old patterns of the band, but with a new sound palette. So from my perspective, it was like a deconstruction of your sound, if that makes sense, while adding like a type of exoskeleton of textures, layers, spaces, voices, all of that. And well, of course, then I remember what I hear Brody say in that interview, and it made perfect sense. You guys spat and stomped on our expectations, as you mentioned before, like a big fuck you to us. And honestly, I was happy for it because it's coherent with your progression as a band, but at the same time, it's not like a logical evolution for a band. So we, as the listener, have to put out some work as well. It's not like candy for kids. It has to be earned. So in my review, I gave it a 10 out of 10 score. So some of our audience strongly agreed, but the other half, or let's say 60, 70% did not agree. They strongly disagreed. So to this day, we are occasionally mocked for praising the work, but I see that we have that in common. I mean, not all of your fan base were happy or satisfied, and they mock us, and we mock them back with memes. So I guess my question will be, how do you guys take that negativity and divided feedback? Because I know you are not the type of band that put out new records to appease the fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's I guess there's, it's not that I feel like we expected what was going to happen with this record, um, like pretty much too closely. Like, I think we knew going in, like there's just no way we're gonna, like, some of our fans had built us up in this way that, like, there's nothing we could do that would satisfy them. Like, there's just, like, their appetite is unquenchable, and like we couldn't, and like, I don't know, without just completely repeating ourselves. It's like, what do we do? And we also, I don't know, like I said, we were sort of bitter, so we wanted to do things that we wanted to do that we knew people might not want to hear. Like, or, like, we wanted to take it on a make it this thing that was just so unpredictable that, like, it just didn't, like, I want, like, I don't know, like, I there aren't too many records I can think of that moved in a similar way, which, and, like, as a person who like, really likes to study the way bands put albums together, I feel like you don't get an album like The Work very often. Like, it's a lot of times people just want to shove all of the most A grade material that they have at the time on the first, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks or whatever, and then, like, the rest follows behind. And, like, I get I get the way that works. Like, Owls is kind of that way. Like, it's just like we front loaded that record with, what we perceive to be the best tracks. I mean, like, with the exceptions of, like, where the title track we kind of displaced just to make things more even, I guess. But, like, that's kind of the approach that takes. And so, but for this record, I knew it was like a slow start, which is a tough sell in this day and age. Like, it's hard to convince people to wait around for the good parts. But I I'm like, I don't know, I'm an old school kind of guy. Like, I like that patience is a virtue, and it's which is, like, very much a thing that comes out in wintertime. Like, you need to strap in and, like, find the things that you like about life if you're going to survive winter. Like, it's going to be those little things that count the most. And, like, I think that the album exists, and the work, it just works well, like, really moment to moment. And, like, I saw a lot of people complain, it's like, oh, this is filler and stuff. It's just like, not everything that isn't a death metal riff is filler. I mean, and sometimes filler is good. Like, you need to, like, I don't know. I feel like maybe today's common metal fan is so desensitized by how exciting every record they listen to is, like, at all times. It's just like, you put on a deathcore record, it sounds like a war going on in your eardrums. It sounds like it's explosions. Every hit is just an atom bomb going off, and it's just like, I just wanted to slow it down. Like this is just a big arms race, it feels like. And like that's why I didn't want to shy away from putting on like throw us like we got into a big argument with our management and our label over putting Wait as track 3. They're like, this is too, it slows everything down, and it halts the progression of the album. And I'm like, even you guys don't get it. Like it's just like the song is literally called Wait, and like it's supposed to be a bump in the road. Like and like, and maybe it's not technically what you're supposed to do when you're writing a hit record or whatever, but like that's why I wanted to do it. And I wanted to make uncomfortable decisions.
And that part of the discomfort of the experience is what I appreciate the most. Honestly, as you mentioned, it's not too often that we get to listen to bands doing these kind of things, like risking the divided opinions. They want to keep growing in success, you know, and maybe that's the part of the soul, or the soul selling of a musician. And well, I understand that some of the fans did respect Old Part 2 and might be their favorite album as of now. But for me, as an audience member of the band, I expect to be shocked. I expect the surprised, and exactly that is it's what I get from the work. It's like watching a TV show, you know. You want the plot for the next season to expand, to keep growing, and find new things of the story. And while we get that from the work, it's also quite clear for me that you took some big efforts to make it as it is. I mean, production wise and just the collecting of ideas and elements, it's just out of proportion. That, of course, for my experience. So, uh, from this point on, I honestly don't know what to expect from the band. And maybe I will ask you about that later. But well, if you want to uh, speak on that, maybe what we can expect for the future.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, it's an interesting subject to broach now because like it is still early, but we are working on new music, and it's going to be, again, we're facing lineup changes, the major lineup changes, and just this feeling of like you can't do it. There's just maybe a little bit of that in the air. And I if history has shown us anything so far, I think that's kind of the environment in which we thrive. So I don't know. I'm confident that the new material is going to be satisfying, and it feels like a new chapter in so many ways. Like the band has, honestly, like it's changed structure completely because um, Jake is no longer, performing with us. So that's going to be a lot more weight on my shoulders. But there's also Andy, uh, from Blackground Initiate fame, is now, yeah, he's joined the band. And so I'm the kind of guy who likes to use the multitude of talents of anybody who's in the band. So um, you know Andy's going to be singing. He's going to be doing his thing. He's going to be, he's going to be a full, like, contributing member. But so that's, it's an interesting stew, I think, that we have going, and I'm just as excited to see how it all really shapes in, as anybody else. Like it's a season of TV that I need to write myself, but it's in the work.
Uh, Not that you mentioned Jake, let me tell you, by the time of the work came out, I asked Nikki for two interviews. She gave me one with him, with Jake, and the other one with Jared. They both were great. And I can only tell you that Jake was a great person to interview, very generous with his answers, and very passionate about the work you guys did in that album. I didn't get to ask him most of my questions because of it. He was just very fluent. But essentially, we talk about expectations and what it does, what big expectations does for a band, especially for Rivers of Nile. And then we talk about smoking weed in the creative process. So we have a lot of fun in that interview, but because of the way he talked about you guys and the band, I never imagined that he will step out of the band. So what can you tell me about his departure and his decision?
Well, I mean, I guess I guess you would have talked to him towards, the beginning of the touring cycle here. But, like I said before, we were just so busy. And Jake has been going through a lot of big, growing pain, life decision kind of stuff. And the touring schedule just, it was hard on him, and then it was hard on us back because he's, he's having trouble reconciling, his home life and his touring life, which can happen to anybody, but unfortunately, it happened with him, and um, it just ran into too many road bumps with it, where it was like it's either it's either something major has to change, like magic, or we have to do something drastic to keep things going. And it's a hard decision to make, obviously, but it's just there was just too many things where it's just like, hey, this guy needs to not worry about this part of his life so much. He needs to figure out other things. And it stings. It's not what any of us wanted. We wanted him to be a part. I don't like changing members. I don't like when people come and go. But it is a natural part of life. And we've been doing this for it's getting close to 15 years now. And in 15 years, a lot happens. Although people change, interests change, just every priorities, especially when you're doing something that's so it's hard on your financial and your personal life and all of this stuff. And it's just like sometimes the dream is it's just hard to live it forever. I it's hard to talk about for me. As I feel Jake's departure really, really personally. It's sad, and I'm sad that he's not going to be not going to be a voice on the record going forward. But I'm happy for the things that we do have, and I'm really confident that we're going to make something awesome, and it's going to feel like the right. It's going to feel like that next season. It's not going to be too alien, I don't think.
Yes, and of course we the fans expect that too as well. But again, as a fan, Jake was, I mean, the lyrics is great in all of his members, but the voice that he had, like the voice he gave to the band as a growler, as a vocalist, is very unique, very distinctive, and of course he will be missed. But let's talk about the next chapter. We know that you are the full-time vocalist now, and this role is not entirely new for you because you have been singing for several records, writing lyrics. But did you have to do some sort of adjustment in your process, like composing the new songs, or has the dynamic of the band changed because of it?
I mean, yeah, this is like a big adjustment process because because Jake had to leave us in the middle of a tour. So I basically, we spent a few shows, just kind of playing, but he's not there. And then it started to get like, it felt like things were starting to get a little hot under the collar for us. So I was just like, maybe I can sing more of this stuff while I'm playing than I think. And so the one night I just kind of I went for it. Like it was like we were playing a sold out show in New York City, and it was packed house, and like I just couldn't play half of the songs to these people, and so I just I just I just did it. Like I've been kind of noodling around with extra parts here and there, but and there's there's no way I did it perfectly. Probably really bad, but I did more of it than I thought I could, and so and everybody else in the band just sort of was ready to roll with that, and like um so I've just been working on it more and more. Um, yeah, it's been yeah. So that whole thing been an adjustment. Just restructure the band. Like I'm not like a guy who's like really great at like talking to the crowd. Like I started doing this stuff, and then I was thinking like, oh wow, I have to like talk between songs and like be
Fill the void.
yeah, and I'm like that's not really what my thing is, but I've been doing my best, only stumbling over my words every so often, but it's been good. But and so but yeah, so to get back to the point of your question, going forward, I guess it's just the adjustment is just going to be that I have to take stock of what tools we have in our toolkit sonically, like. I'm very lucky that I'm not the only guy with a voice in the band. Like there's me, and then Jared can sing as well. And Andy, they're amazing singers. Like so, like I'll have that. During to create layers and structure, and I'm kind of trying to get them into doing harsh vocals, so they can help me out with this and that. But so it's taken a lot of like reorchestration of the vocal stuff to get it up to snuff. But like once locking in this material that already exists in that with that configuration, it has been helpful in like writing the new stuff with what we have now.
Okay, now that you mentioned Andy Thomas, I had the chance to interview him for the Violent Portraits album, and he
Hmm.
seemed like a great dude to talk with. Actually, we get along really well during that conversation. It
Not surprised.
it it came out that we shared the same birthday, so we owe us a beer and a toast. And I'm looking forward to your show in Guadalajara to fulfill that promise. I
I'm
I
dude, love that.
I expecting for that to happen. And of course, it's a shame that he as well is no longer with his band anymore, Black Crown. But it's also great that he is now with Rivers full time, as you mentioned. I admire his work with the band, with the guitar, with his voice. Yes, what can you tell me about his participation on the new song so far? And has him be involved in the compositions?
Yeah, he's definitely like everybody in the band always has a voice, when it comes to what's going on musically. Like we will run, anything, that Brody writes or anything like that will run by everybody and be like, hey, is this cool? And Andy's just, he's part of that creative editing process now. He's helping develop, vocal melodies and things like that. And we have one song right now that's driven, entirely by a riff that he wrote. So yeah, so like he's in there. It's like he's definitely in the soup. Um, it's going to be interesting because I don't want this just to I don't want it to sound like Rivers of Black Crown, Like it wanted to sound like our band, but now Andy's here too. Um, and I think it works. I think it'll be satisfying and not exactly what people expect, and but also you know it'll yeah it's I don't want to give too much away about what we're working on now, but he's been really a a, a big part of it, and I feel like some of it we're also kind of writing to his strengths, a little bit too. So it's gonna be yeah, it's gonna feel like a cool collaboration, and also like feel like the next chapter. Yeah.
Yes, well, it's a new chapter because you are off the seasons now. And I don't want to sound to this sound harsh or good, but as a fan, I think all these changes and new factors in the band make the wait for the new album all the more exciting. Um, After the work, what is clear to me is that you don't repeat yourselves. So I have no clue where your next album may take us. But again, the expectations are high, and at this point, I think your fans are open to anything. The ones that stuck with you. We have only known Rivers for the 4 seasons concept. So what can we expect for the new album? A new concept, maybe a step back to your roots, a follower of the work, more sax, more instruments, less of them. What can you tell me?
Um, I I think we're just kind of taking things that like what I think the thing I can tell you that would make the most sense without like really being like, oh, it's got this much saxophone or this much that or anything, or we're adding this. I think we're trying to write tighter songs. Like um I know that a lot of what we did on the last two records especially was like, just really embellish big, like so many multiple like phases of each song and orchestrations that are just massive and have a lot of bells and whistles. And I think we wanted to for this new stuff, it's still like there's a lot of that there's so much of that layering, but it's the songs are structured in a way that it just feels better going down. Like it's a little easier to digest. Like and we it's also a challenge to ourselves. So it's like can we step back from doing these big proggy, not like 7 9 minute songs, and just write, get to the point and write 4 minutes of like something that's awesome and that people will want to listen to again. So I think that's more the tone this time than we want to try and like do some other thing. We want to give it the most concentrated dose that we can. And I think that's what makes the new material more special, honestly.
Are we too far for new material? I mean, is this year going to happen for us?
If all goes, yeah, be hearing some new songs well before the year's over. Yeah, we have some activity planned for after we get back from the Mexican tour, and and then hopefully we can get some new music in the ears rather quickly after that.
Okay, now that you mentioned Mexico, which is why I invited you here. I think it's really great that the band Roots of Night is coming along with Imperial Triumphant. Both bands have never come here before, and I think at this moment for extreme music are one of the most important voices in terms of pushing the boundaries for just for the fans, just for the sake of you know uh, breaking expectations. So what can you tell me about how did you two guys came together? Did you guys invite them?
Well, okay. I think a few years ago when they first started kind of gaining some traction in the scene. I had heard about them, and I got really into their one record, Vile Luxury, I think, a few years back, and I was like, wow, this band is weird as shit. Like it's awesome. I love this whole thing. Their whole like what their songs are about and their imagery and everything is really neat to me. Um, but then it just so happened that they got by the same booking agent that we have. So we're booked by the same guy, and I when I found that out, I was like, oh, this is awesome. We had a show in New York. We had back-to-back shows in New York that we were going to be playing at the end of our Where Owls Know My Name tour, and we needed a lineup for the second night. So we reached out to Imperial Triumphant. This was a few years ago to see if they'd be part of it, and they said yes. I was really stoked, and so we got to meet them there, for the first time. They played that show with us, and they were awesome. They were really cool guys. And then ran into them again this summer at Motoculture Festival in France, and partied with them, hung out for a while there, and so it was confirmed, like, we get along with these guys, so, when it was heard that they were up for coming to Mexico with us, we were all about it. Like, yeah, like we're buddies. We love their music. We think it makes a cool show with them and us. And so we were just all in on it. So yeah, really really cool to have them.
Yeah, so to have a live act like them, Imperial, to as an opener for you, it's I don't have the words. I mean, I'm honestly really excited to finally see the both bands live. But for you, for the band, what are the expectations for your first days here in Mexico, and why did it guys took you so long?
Oh, I mean, we've been trying to get down there for years now. Excuse me. I think in 2016 or maybe 15, we had booked a tour to go down there, and it just, like, we were all promised, the this and that from the promoter that was handling the deal, and it just didn't work out. Um, so we didn't get to go, unfortunately, and then we've just been waiting ever since to for an opportunity to come back, and then we had another festival appearance scheduled for 2020 in Mexico City that got canceled because of COVID. So who again is two times in a row, and so it's become this thing for us where it's just like we just gotta get down there. Like I feel like we have more. We look at it like the metrics from Spotify. We have more listeners in Mexico City, and I think Mexico as a whole, than anywhere else in the world. So I was just like, God, we got to get down there. So when we got this opportunity to come down there, we jumped at the chance. Like it's been on our list for forever, So, but things don't work out right away, but I'm glad that we're finally going to make it happen.
And we are glad too. I promise you that the energy will be big, will be loud. Will you be playing the working full?
No, we'll be playing probably quite a lot of it. I don't want to give too much away about the set list, but as we've talked ourselves through all the records, hopefully the set list does something similar for the audience.
Yes, I mean, if you play some songs of Monarchy, I would love that. It will be the best of times.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay, my last question. This is the closer for any of my interviews. If you could relate, I mean, connect the concept of the work, the ideas in your mind, the lyrics, etc., the aesthetics, with another piece of work that already exists in another form of art, like a movie, a painting, a book, anything, what would that be and why?
Well, I mean, it's the work has this baked into it already because it's kind of supposed to be like it are the wall, but Pink Floyd's The Wall. Like, I mean, even has like a similar enough title, but it's The Wall is a huge inspiration to that record and to the work, and it's one that The Wall is my favorite. I don't like to pick favorites necessarily, but like that's the it's influenced me a lot, and because it's a story of an artist. It's a story. It's basically Roger Waters' memoirs, put into a really grossly dynamic, really probably overblown, too long record. But it's so entertaining. It's so cinematic. Has these themes that come back and carry you through this story. And but it's like the story of his struggles of being so famous essentially. And I was like, well, what if I told this story, somewhat? Like what does that look like from Rivers of Nile's perspective? Like it it's been this like cycle of like, we had this somewhat success with Where Owls Know My Name, and it's this sort of reflection on that and becoming this thing more and more, giving yourself to it. And I think it's and then reflecting on where you've come from in your life and what the music turns you into. It's all these themes that, it feels like it's almost a cousin of it thematically to The Wall.